Commander Velthor of the Dominion fleet sat hunched over his drink in the shadowy corner of Station Mega 7's cantina. His reptilian features were etched with deep scars, but it was his eyes that told the real story, haunted forever. Changed by something that defied explanation, the cantina buzzed with the usual mix of traders, mercenaries, and soldiers from across the galaxy. Most gave the scarred commander a wide berth. His reputation preceded him once the most feared battle leader in the Dominion's Third Fleet. A broken warrior who spent his days drowning memories in cheap liquor. The amber liquid in his glass caught the dim light as he lifted it with trembling claws. Each sip carried the weight of 1,000 regrets, 1,000 faces that would never leave his mind. The other patrons whispered about him when they thought he couldn't hear. Some said he had lost his nerve. Others claimed he had seen things that would drive lesser beings mad. A young warrior approached, his armor pristine and unmarked by battle. The insignia on his shoulder marked him as fresh from the military academy. His steps were confident, his posture straight with the arrogance that only comes from never having faced true danger. "Commander Velthor," the young soldier said, his voice carrying the eager tone of someone seeking glory. "I am HFY, recently assigned to the 7th Battle Group. I have heard many stories about your victories." Velthor didn't look up from his drink. Its reflection stared back at him from the liquid surface, distorted and broken. "Stories?" he muttered. "Everyone loves stories. Tell me about the humans," HFY pressed, sliding into the seat across from the commander. "I hear they're nothing but primitive savages. It's barely worth our time. My instructors say they use crude weapons and have no real military strategy." The glass stopped halfway to Velthor's lips. His golden eyes slowly lifted to meet the young warrior's gaze. For a moment, something flickered in those depths, a spark of the predator he had once been. Savages. He let out a bitter laugh that carried no humor. The sound made nearby patrons turn their heads before quickly looking away. "Sit down, whelp. Let me tell you about the day I learned fear." HFY settled into his chair, leaning forward with anticipation. He expected heroic tales of Dominion superiority, stories of swift victories and cowering enemies. His mind was already painting pictures of glorious battles where technology and training always prevailed. Instead, Velthor began to speak in a voice barely above a whisper, his words cutting through the cantina's noise like a blade through silk. "It was supposed to be simple," he began, his claws unconsciously tracing old scars on his forearm. "A mining colony on the edge of human space. Intelligence reports said maybe 200 colonists, basic defensive systems, nothing that should trouble a proper military force." The commander's voice grew distant, as if he were seeing through time itself. "We had 800 warriors, the best equipment the Dominion could provide. Plasma weapons that could cut through steel like paper. Armor that had never been breached by primitive kinetic weapons. Ships that could glass a planet from orbit." He paused, taking another sip of his drink. The liquid seemed to burn on the way down, but it was nothing compared to the fire in his memories. "The orbital bombardment went perfectly. We watched their pathetic structures crumble into dust. Their communications went silent. Their power grid failed. By every tactical measure, the battle was already over before it began." HFY nodded eagerly. This was what he wanted to hear, proof of Dominion supremacy over the upstart species that dared to expand into their territory. "I commanded the Assault Carrier Dominator," Velthor continued. 30 years of victories, 12 conquered worlds, not a single defeat on my record." His voice cracked slightly. The old commander's eyes grew distant, staring at something only he could see. The cantina seemed to fade around them as he spoke, his words painting pictures of a battle that had changed everything. "We deployed in standard formation. 3 waves of dropships, heavy armor support, air superiority fighters, everything by the book. Every protocol followed to perfection." Shook his head slowly. "We thought we were wolves descending on sheep." "But you won, didn't you?" HFY asked, though something in the commander's tone was beginning to worry him. "You always win?" Velthor's laugh was hollow, empty of any warmth. "Won? You think I won?" He looked directly at the young warrior, and HFY saw something in those golden eyes that made his blood run cold. "I survived, boy. That's not the same thing. The commander set down his glass with careful precision, as if afraid his shaking hands might drop it. We thought we were hunting prey, he repeated, his voice now carrying the weight of terrible knowledge. We were wrong. 3 cycles ago, Commander Velthar received orders that seemed like a gift from the gods. The Dominion High Command had identified a human mining colony on a distant world called Kepler 4 for to see. Intelligence reports painted a picture of easy victory, barely 300 colonists, outdated defensive systems, and no military presence. Worth mentioning, Velthor stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Dominator, watching the target planet grow larger on the main screen. Around him, his crew worked with practiced efficiency, preparing for what they all believed would be a routine operation. The ship's weapons hummed with deadly energy, ready to deliver swift justice to any who dared oppose Dominion expansion. "Sir, we're detecting minimal orbital defenses," reported his tactical officer, a young female named Zarakith. 2 automated satellites and what appears to be a single communication array. No military vessels in the system. Velthar nodded, his confidence growing. "Begin standard bombardment protocol. Target their power grid first, then their communications. I want them isolated and helpless before we set foot on their world." The first salvo of plasma bolts streaked through space like falling stars, struck the planet's surface with devastating precision, turning the human structures into clouds of dust and debris. Secondary explosions bloomed like flowers of destruction as fuel depots and equipment storage areas went up in flames. "Direct hits confirmed," Zarakith announced. "All primary targets neutralized. The colony appears to be completely disabled." Through the tactical display, Velthar watched the settlement burn. Smoke rose from what had once been buildings, creating a dark cloud that spread across the mining site. No movement was visible through their sensors. No distress signals reached their receivers. The humans had been silenced in a matter of minutes. "Excellent work," Velthor said, allowing himself a moment of satisfaction. "Deploy the landing forces. Standard pacification formation. This should be over within the hour." The first wave of dropships launched from the Dominator's belly, carrying 200 elite warriors toward the planet's surface. Velthor watched their progress on his command screen, each ship represented by a small blue dot descending through the atmosphere. Everything proceeded exactly as planned. The dropships touched down in the designated landing zone, a flat area. Just outside the destroyed colony, Velthor opened the communication channel to his ground commander, expecting to hear reports of surrendering humans and successful occupation. Instead, he heard confusion in the voice of Captain Mordock, his most experienced ground leader. "Commander, we have a problem. The landing zone is ... empty." "Empty?" Velthar frowned. "What do you mean empty?" "No bodies, sir. No survivors. No signs of the colonists anywhere. It's as if they just vanished." Velthar studied his tactical display more carefully. The thermal readings showed no life signs. In the immediate area of the destroyed settlement, "Expand your search pattern," he ordered. "Check the surrounding caves and rock formations. They might have taken shelter underground." For the next hour, Velthor watched his forces spread across the planet's surface. They found mining equipment, personal belongings, and signs of recent habitation, but no humans. It was as if the entire population had simply disappeared into thin air. That's when the first explosion rocked the landing zone. The blast came from beneath one of the dropships, lifting the 30-ton vessel into the air before slamming it back down as a twisted wreck. The explosion was followed immediately by another, then another. Hidden charges detonated across the landing zone with deadly precision. "We're under attack." Captain Mordock's voice crackled through the comm system. "The humans are here. They're everywhere." Velthar watched in disbelief as his tactical display erupted in chaos. Red warning lights flashed as his forces came under fire from positions that hadn't existed moments before. The humans weren't cowering in underground shelters. They were fighting back with coordinated precision. "How many are there?" Velthar demanded. "Unknown, sir. They're using the destroyed buildings as cover. They've dug tunnels throughout the entire settlement. We're taking heavy casualties." The commander's confidence began to crack as reports flooded in from across the battlefield. His warriors, trained for decades in the art of war, were being outmaneuvered by primitive colonists who shouldn't have possessed any military knowledge. Sir, Zaraketh called out, her voice tight with concern. I am detecting unusual energy signatures from the planet's surface. The humans appear to be using our own weapons against us. Velthor's blood ran cold. That's impossible. Our weapons are keyed to Dominion biosignatures. It can't be operated by alien hands. Nevertheless, sir, the energy patterns are unmistakable. They're firing modified plasma rifles. Through his command screen, Velthor watched a human fighter emerge from a concealed position. The figure moved with surprising grace, carrying what appeared to be a jury-rigged combination of Dominion technology and primitive human tools. The weapon in the human's hands discharged with deadly accuracy, dropping two of his warriors before they could react. This isn't possible, Velthor whispered, his worldview beginning to crumble. They're just miners. They shouldn't know how to fight, but as the battle raged on, one terrible truth became clear. The humans weren't just fighting back, they were learning. And they were learning fast. The human defenders emerged from hidden positions carved deep into the planet's rocky terrain. They appeared like ghosts from the stone itself, rising from concealed tunnels and caves that Velthor's sensors had never detected. Their movements were swift and purposeful, each fighter taking position with the precision of trained soldiers. But these weren't soldiers. Intelligence reports had confirmed they were miners, engineers, and colonists, ordinary people who had come to this world seeking a new life. Yet as Velthor watched through his tactical display, he saw them fight with a desperation that violated every civilized rule of warfare. A human fighter rolled behind the wreckage of a destroyed building, clutching a weapon that made Velthor's blood freeze. It was a Dominion plasma rifle, but it had been modified with human components. Crude metal plating covered the original housing, and strange wires connected it to what appeared to be a mining tool's power source. Captain Mordok, report. Velthor barked into his communicator. The response came through heavy static and the sound of weapons fire. Sir, they're using our own equipment against us. Somehow figured out how to operate our weapons. Velthor's claws gripped the command console. That's impossible. Our weapons are biolocked to Dominion DNA patterns. I know what I'm seeing, Commander. They've bypassed the locks somehow. And they're more accurate with them than some of our own troops. Through his screen, Velthor watched a human named Dongsu emerge from a smoking crater. The human carried a weapon that had clearly been a Dominion energy pistol just hours before. Now it was connected to a backpack-sized power unit that the human had built from mining equipment. The modified weapon discharged with twice the power of the original, cutting through Dominion armor like paper. But it wasn't just their use of captured weapons that unnerved Velthor. It was their adaptation. Within the first hour of combat, the humans had learned to target the weak points in Dominion armor. They aimed for the joints where the energy shields were weakest, the spots where repeated impacts could crack the protective plating. How do they know our vulnerabilities? Velthor demanded of his intelligence officer, a nervous creature named Klextar. Unknown, sir. Our armor designs are classified at the highest levels. No alien species has ever identified those weak points so quickly. Yet the humans had done exactly that. Velthor watched as a human fighter named Hyenwu crawled beneath a Dominion hover tank. The vehicle's crew had no idea of the danger below them. Using nothing but scavenged parts and explosive mining charges, the human attached a crude device to the tank's underside. The explosion that followed lifted the air-ton vehicle into the air before slamming it back down as twisted metal. Hyenwu rolled clear of the wreckage, already moving toward his next target. His movements were calculated, efficient, and terrifyingly effective. Sir, we're losing ground across all fronts, Captain Mordok reported. The humans are coordinating their attacks with impossible precision. Every time we adapt our tactics, they counter-adapt within minutes. Velthor studied the battlefield display with growing horror. The humans were indeed acting as a unified force, their attacks perfectly timed and coordinated. But how were they communicating? His technicians had jammed every known frequency, disrupted every possible communication method. How were they talking to each other? Velthor demanded of his communications officer. Unknown, sir. We've blocked all standard radio frequencies, quantum entanglement communicators, and even primitive electromagnetic signals, yet they're still sharing information in real time. Through his screen, Velthar watched another human. A female named Ji-Hai coordinate a flanking maneuver that cost him 30 warriors. Toes. She spoke into what appeared to be a primitive communication device little more than a metal box with wires. In crude components, her voice remained calm despite the chaos around her, directing other humans with the confidence of a seasoned military commander. Squad 3, move to position Alpha. Squad 7, prepare for breach in Section 4. Remember, aim for the joints. The humans responded to her commands with military precision, moving as one organism despite being scattered across the battlefield. They shared information, tactics, and resources with an efficiency that rivaled the Dominion's best units. There. Not just fighting, Velthar realized with growing horror, his voice barely a whisper. They're learning, and they were learning fast. Every fallen Dominion warrior meant more weapons in human hands. Every tactical mistake became a lesson that spread instantly through their ranks. Every piece of captured equipment was quickly modified and improved upon. A human engineer named Minho had somehow managed to reverse engineer a Dominion energy shield generator. Within hours, he had not only figured out how it worked, but had built an improved version using mining equipment and salvaged parts. The crude device protected a group of human fighters as they advanced on a Dominion position. "Sir," Klextar called out, his voice shaking with fear. "The humans are adapting faster than we can respond. Every advantage we gain, they counter within minutes. It's as if they're sharing a collective consciousness." Velthar watched the battle rage on, his confidence crumbling with each passing moment. His warrior soldiers trained from birth. In the art of war were being outmaneuvered by colonists who had learned to fight in the span of hours. The nightmare was just beginning. As the battle entered its second day, Velthar stood on his command bridge watching his world collapse. The tactical display that had once shown Dominion superiority now painted a picture of impossible defeat. Ash! Marking positions where his forces were being pushed back by an enemy. That shouldn't have been able to fight at all. The humans had done something that violated every law of warfare, Velthar understood. They had taken his advanced technology and made it better. Captured plasma weapons now fired with greater accuracy and power than the originals. Dominion armor plating had been stripped and reshaped into more effective protective gear. Even there, communication jamming had been bypassed by crude devices that somehow worked better than military-grade equipment. "Sir, we're losing ground across all fronts," reported his tactical officer, Zarakith. Voice carried a tremor of fear that Velthar had never heard before. "The humans are using our own weapons against us, and they're more effective than our operators." Through his command screen, Velthar watched a human engineer named Dongmin work with impossible speed. The human had somehow breached the shields of a Dominion gunship using a weapon that defied all logic. It was cobbled together from mining equipment, salvaged alien technology, and what appeared to be spare parts from a food preparation unit. The device shouldn't have been able to function, much less penetrate military-grade energy shields. Yet it had worked. The gunship's shields flickered and died, leaving the vessel vulnerable to concentrated fire from other humans who had learned to coordinate their attacks with deadly precision. "How is this possible?" Velthar demanded of his science officer. "Our shields are designed to withstand the most advanced weapons in the galaxy." "Unknown, sir. The humans appear to have identified a resonance frequency in our shield generators that we didn't know existed, or exploiting a weakness that our own engineers never discovered," said Veltharus. Confidence, built over 30 years. Of victories cracked like brittle glass. These weren't warriors defeating him. These were miners, farmers, and engineers who had learned to fight in the span of hours. Yet they moved with the coordination of elite soldiers and the innovation of master tacticians. A human named So Young led an assault team across the battlefield with movements that spoke of natural talent and rapid learning. She had somehow acquired a set of modified Dominion armor that fit her smaller frame perfectly. The armor's original systems had been gutted and replaced with human components that actually improved its performance. Squad 4, move left. Squad 6, prepare breaching charges. Remember, their armor is weak at the shoulder joints. So Young's voice carried clearly across the communication channels that the humans had somehow kept open despite every jamming attempt. Velthar watched in disbelief as her team captured an entire Dominion outpost. The humans moved with the confidence of veteran warriors, despite having learned to fight only hours before. They used tactics that combined Dominion military doctrine with innovative approaches that no academy had ever taught. They're not just surviving, Velthar whispered to himself, his voice barely audible over the bridge's alarm systems. They're evolving. Yes. The human assault on the outpost demonstrated something that chilled Velthar to his core. The humans weren't just adapting to Dominion technology, they were improving it. Captured weapons fired faster and more accurately. Stolen armor provided better protection. Even basic tools had been modified into devastating weapons of war. Sir Captain Mordoc's voice crackled through the communicator. We need immediate reinforcements. The humans have captured our heavy weapons depot and are turning our own artillery against us. Velthar closed his eyes, feeling the weight of inevitable defeat pressing down on him. His warriors, trained from birth in the art of war, were being systematically outmaneuvered by people who had been peaceful colonists just 2 days ago. Commander Zarakith called out, her voice tight with panic. The humans are advancing on our primary landing zone. If they capture our dropships, we'll have no way to evacuate wounded personnel. For the first time in his career, Velthar faced a decision that went against every instinct he possessed. The Dominion had never retreated from a battle against a primitive species. Their technological superiority had always guaranteed victory, but the humans had changed the rules of engagement. They had taken technology and made it better. They had learned tactics in hours that took Dominion soldiers years to master. It turned every advantage into a weapon against its creators. Sir, your orders? Zarkath pressed. Velthar claws scraped against the command console as he struggled with the words that would define the rest of his career. All units, withdraw to orbit. Initiate emergency evacuation protocols. The bridge fell silent, except for the hum of machinery and the distant sound of weapons fire. His officers stared at him in disbelief. The Dominion did not retreat. The Dominion did not admit defeat. But the humans weren't content to simply drive them off. As Velthar's forces began their withdrawal, the enemy pursued. Human ships hastily modified mining vessels, and cargo haulers lifted off from the planet's surface with terrifying ingenuity. Their crude modifications somehow allowed them to match the speed of military vessels designed for space combat. Hunters had become the hunted, and Velthar knew his nightmares were just beginning. Back in the cantina, Velthar drained his glass as the young recruit Kexival sat in stunned silence. The amber liquid burned his throat, but it was nothing compared to the fire of memory that consumed his thoughts. The human colony at Kepler-44 to sea had been evacuated 3 cycles ago, but the damage to Dominion confidence was irreversible. The cantina's noise seemed muted now, as if the weight of Velthar's story had created a bubble of silence around their table. Other patrons continued their conversations, unaware that they sat mere feet from a warrior whose experiences had shattered the foundation of everything the Dominion believed about warfare. But surely our superior numbers, Kexival began, his voice uncertain. The confidence that had marked his earlier words was gone, replaced by the trembling uncertainty of someone whose worldview was crumbling. Numbers? Velthar laughed bitterly, the sound carrying no humor. You think they haven't thought of that? You think the Dominion High Command hasn't tried overwhelming them with sheer force? He gestured to the bartender for another drink, his movements slow and deliberate. After Kepler-4 to sea, we sent larger fleets. Better weapons, more soldiers. Every engagement since has been the same story. They adapt, they learn, they improve. New drink arrived, and Velthar stared into its depths, as if seeking answers in the swirling liquid. A human named Tejo took down 3 of our cruisers with a single modified freighter. 1 ship, boy. 1 ship against 3 of our most advanced warships. Kexival's mouth opened in disbelief. That's impossible. Freighter couldn't possibly, he had modified it. Velthar continued, his voice cutting through the young warriors. Protest. stripped out the cargo holds and replaced them with weapon systems, jury-rigged from salvaged Dominion technology. The ship shouldn't have been able to function, much less fight. But it did more than fight, it won. The old commander took a long sip of his drink, letting the silence stretch between them. Around the cantina, life continued as normal. Traders argued over prices, mercenaries boasted about their latest jobs, and station workers shared gossip over their meals. None of them understood the magnitude of what Velthair was describing. Another human, called Yoon-ji, developed countermeasures for our plasma shields in the middle of a firefight. Velthor said, his voice growing quieter. Not in a laboratory, not over months of research. In the middle of combat, while our weapons were firing at her. He paused, remembering the tactical reports that had crossed his desk. She was an engineer on a civilian transport that got caught in a battle near the Rigel system. Her ship was outgunned, outmanned, and surrounded. By all rights, she should have surrendered or died. What happened? Kexival asked, though something in his tone suggested he already feared the answer. She analyzed our weapons' fire patterns. During the battle, built a device from spare parts that disrupted our plasma containment fields. Every shot we fired became unstable, turning our own weapons against us. Her transport not only escaped but disabled 2 of our destroyers in the process. The recruit's confidence visibly wavered. His hands trembled slightly as he reached for his own drink. Then how do we win? There must be a way. The Dominion has never lost a war. Velthor stood slowly, his movements heavy with exhaustion and the weight of terrible knowledge. That's the question that keeps me awake, youngling. That's the question that haunts every commander who has faced these creatures. He looked down at the young warrior, seeing his own past reflected in those eager eyes. These humans, they don't just fight a war, they evolve through it. Every defeat teaches them something new. Every loss fuels their determination to improve. Cantina seemed to grow quieter around them, as if the very air was listening to Velthor's words. We've tried everything. Overwhelming force, advanced technology, tactical superiority, numerical advantages. Nothing works for long. They adapt to everything we throw at them. Kexival's voice was barely a whisper. Then we're doomed. Perhaps, Velthor said, moving toward the cantina's entrance. Perhaps we're fighting the wrong kind of war. We approach conflict as a contest of strength against strength, technology against technology. But humans don't fight that way. He paused at the entrance, looking back at the young warrior who sat alone at the table, staring into his drink with the same haunted expression that Velthor had worn for 3 cycles. You want to know the truth? Velthor asked, his voice carrying. Across the cantina's din, we're not fighting a species. We're fighting an idea. The idea that nothing is impossible if you're willing to sacrifice everything to achieve it. The old commander stepped into the station's corridor, his footsteps echoing in the metal passageway. Behind him, Kexival remained at the table, finally understanding why the Dominion's greatest warriors spoke of humans not with contempt, but with dread. The young recruit sat in the cantina's dim light, surrounded by the casual conversations of beings who had never faced the humans in battle. He now carried the same burden that Velthor bore, the knowledge that the Dominion's age of easy conquest was over. The humans had changed the rules of warfare itself, and nothing would ever be the same in the distance. Station announcements echoed through the corridors, but Kexival heard none of them. He was already planning his resignation from military service, understanding that some battles were not meant to be won.